Hello, wonderful people. This is Tom Check with Choice Coaching. So happy to see you back again. Today, we're going to be talking a little bit about assumptions. So, if you watched the last video, we talked about behaviors and starting to identify some of the fears that operate underneath our behaviors. And we do that so that we get a little more space between us and the fear so that we can make better choices. Changing behaviors isn't always the goal. Understanding ourselves and being more in control of our situation and ourselves is often the goal, because then we can create the change that's most meaningful for us in our lives. So, what I want to talk to you about today with these assumptions is really even going deeper underneath the fears to identify kind of these modes that we've all built around how we think the world works. And this is not going to be me telling you to change the way you think the world works, but it is going to be me inviting you to recognize that you've got some assumptions about how the world works. And those assumptions may or may not actually be true, but we believe them as true. We take them as true. And this is a really kind of a challenging concept for a lot of us to step into, but it's really powerful when we do. Excuse me. And so there's this idea, and I didn't come up with it. This was created by a couple of authors that I'm familiar with called Robert Keegan and Lisa Lahey. And they talk about the immunity to change and this idea that underneath the behaviors and the fears and the commitments that we're holding are these assumptions about how the world works. And some of them are really important and they're valid and they're perfectly true. I assume that if I put my hand down on a hot stove, I'm going to get burned, right? Really basic fear and assumption that all of us have. And in the real world tends to work out to the point where we never put our hands anywhere near a hot stove, because at some point in our lives we did. And it hurt so much, we decided never to do that again. And it also means that even if a stove isn't on, most of us are going to be really, really careful around putting our hands anywhere on it. So how the heck does this apply to life, right? Well, there's lots of hot stoves out there, and some of them are emotional. Some of them are relational. Some of them have to do with how people react when we interact with them. Some of them have to do with what it means when other people interact with us a certain way. And all of these things, at some point in our lives, were really true. So as an example, one of the assumptions that I found out through this process in my life, was that I assumed that if I wasn't in control of a situation, kind of dictating how things were going to go, that I assumed everybody else was going to take advantage of me. What does that mean? That's really broad, it's really generalized. And that's how a lot of these assumptions work. Is it showed up all the time. I thought I had to be in control of where we would go for dinner when my wife and I went out, because I was afraid that she would intentionally pick a place I didn't like. And it feels really silly to even say that out loud. But when I identified that that was the assumption that was going on, that was causing all of this tension every time we wanted to go out to dinner and I wanted something and she wanted something else, that was really powerful for me to recognize that that was my hot stove, right? I assumed that if I didn't take control of the situation, she would do something that didn't work for me. And when I identified that assumption, then I could really start to experiment with it and see how true it is. And we've all got these assumptions, and we've all got hundreds of them. It's how the human brain works, is we develop these patterns so that we don't have to think all the time about every single little thing. And most of the time it works out fine until we decide we want something different in our lives. And then if we don't identify that assumption that's driving the behaviors and the fears around that change, we find ourselves feeling really stuck. And being stuck sucks. And it can be really disempowering to try and lose that 10 pounds again and do it the same way you did it that one time and have it work for a couple months and then not stick. Or to have, the way that you show up as a leader at your job, to really step into trying to change the behaviors and seeing a little bit of traction, but as soon as you stop trying really hard, you fall back into old patterns. And what would it be like if there was a different way that maybe wasn't as complex? It's still really difficult. I'm not going to lie. It's still a huge challenge to step in and challenge these assumptions and to identify where they're true and where they're not. But it's a lot simpler than trying to change every way that I react and behave throughout my day. And what I find, both with my clients and with myself, is that when I can create a little bit of shift in the assumptions that I hold about the world, I start to see a lot of things change in my life really rapidly and what feels like really simply after doing a fair bit of work on that assumption. So, what would it be like if you identified the assumptions about how the world works for you? We'll talk a little bit more about the nuts and bolts of it, but I wanted to get this out there, but not make the video go too long. So I hope this is helpful. I hope you all have a great day, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.